New York Governor Andrew Cuomo signed an executive order over the weekend that orders the state of New York to pull financial aid from any company that supports the BDS movement. So for those of you who don't know, BDS is the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement that tries to punish Israel economically for the occupation as opposed to militarily. So here's what Cuomo said. In New York, we lead by example. We are also a place of action. We want to take immediate action because we want Israel to know that we are on their side. If you boycott against Israel, New York will boycott you. So they're literally going to make a list of businesses that are condemned by the state of New York here too. So keep that in mind. Cuomo continues. New York stands in solidarity with Israel today and always. This state will not stand for the politics of discrimination, irony, in any form. And we will continue to demonstrate our unwavering support for the people of Israel in the fight for freedom, again, irony, liberty, and democracy. I'm proud to sign this nation's leading executive order, which will help protect Israel from the threat of divestment. This order sends the message that this state will do everything in its power to end this hateful, intolerant campaign. Again, massive irony. So, really, that's the point? That's the argument you're going to make? You couldn't come up with a more clever one? Oh, I'm so against discrimination that I'm going to discriminate against people who support BDS. What? No, see, BDS is an attempt to end the occupation, and they do it in the most moral way possible. So, not by picking up a gun and going to kill people, but by saying, hey, we're going to put economic pressure on you to make it so that you feel like you have no choice because you're losing money. So you feel like you have no choice but to do a deal and to get a free and independent Palestinian state. But again, they flip the truth on its head. Well, we're not going to stand for the politics of discrimination in any form. Well, you have a weird way of showing that by discriminating against people who support BDS. This is just a form of political thought. And they're like, we're going to discriminate against that form of political thought. And then they say, well, look, we support people in Israel fighting for freedom, liberty, and democracy. It's an apartheid state. For fuck's sake, it's an apartheid state. Do you not understand that? Palestinians have lost their land. More and more of their land is getting taken. And Israel is occupying them militarily. You can't say you support freedom, liberty, and democracy as you're doing the antithesis of freedom, liberty, and democracy. And again, the irony of intolerant. We need to end this hateful, intolerant campaign. No, BDS is actually more for tolerance and to end hate. Because they're the ones who are saying, can we give Palestinians basic human rights? But again, they flip it on its head. And by the way, they also conflate people being anti-Zionism and against the occupation with anti-Semitism. A grotesque trick. Oh, you're somebody who wants a Palestinian state? You're somebody who wants a free and independent Palestine and you want them to have their human rights? I guess you hate all Jews. That's ridiculous. That's just as stupid as the people who say, hey, if you criticize the doctrine of Islam, you hate all Muslims. That's not true. Stop fucking making it up and sidestepping because you can't win on the substance. So, this is only one of the clearest examples I've ever seen of a crackdown on free speech. And I think the overarching point here is you don't even have to agree with BDS to acknowledge that the government can't single out people for punishment based on their political beliefs. Imagine they did the same thing for any other state. If somebody called for a boycott of Iran and the government's like, oh, no, we're going to single you out and crack down on you. That would never happen. That would never happen. So this will go down as cheerleading apartheid. This is very similar to if there were some sort of ordinances passed in the U.S. back in the day when there was apartheid in South Africa, the crackdown of people who were trying to bring an end to apartheid in South Africa. So they are proudly on the wrong side of history. And just so you know why they're so panicked, we covered this in a story recently. 20 to 30% of companies in the West Bank in occupied territories are now gone. They're gone. Why? Because of BDS. They couldn't take the fact they were losing all this money. There was a lot of negative press against them. So they got out of the occupied territories, which is great. Which is great. Now, some people don't like BDS because they say, hey, look, they want right to return. That means Israel doesn't exist. I actually agree with that criticism, that you're not going to get... They're asking for more than a two-state deal. But my response to that would be, that's how negotiations go. So, you know what happens? People in Israel, in the Jewish Home Party and in the Likud Party, say, we want all the land. We want all the land. Okay, well, you shouldn't get it. So there are many people in Palestine who say, we want all the land. We want all the land. We don't even want the 1947 partition plan to remain. Okay, well, you're not going to get that either. So you know what we do? We get together, we get a deal. Most experts agree would be along the 1967 borders. You get a two-state deal, both international recognition, and voila, you have a peace deal. So yeah, I don't agree with right to return. I agree with a two-state solution, but the way you get that, there's an old saying, you shoot for the stars, you may reach the moon. And let's face it, Israel right now has all the power. They have the world's largest military in human history backing them. So when they say we want all the land, that's a much bigger threat than the Palestinians, because Palestinians aren't nearly as powerful. So, because in theory, philosophically, they want back all the land that was stolen from them. That's nothing to blame them for. You can disagree with that position, but understand where it's coming from and understand that this is a step in a process towards a two-state deal. So both sides need to come together, need to get a two-state deal, but naturally Israel has been blocking that. The Netanyahu government has been blocking that. We know because you had the Palestinians propose through Jordan at the UN a two-state deal along 67 borders. Netanyahu just said, no, I'm not even going to consider that. So it's pretty clear at this point in time that the government, with all the power, has said, no, we don't want to do a deal. Okay, so if that's how you want to play the game, let's play the game. Boycott, divestment, and sanctions. We're going to hurt you economically until you agree to do the deal. And I would love it if the U.S. got on board with this, but of course they won't. And I would love it if they said, we're going to lift the veto at the UN, and we're going to withhold billions of dollars in aid from you unless and until you do a two-state deal. You want the aid money back? You want our support again? Just do a two-state deal. If not, bye-bye. And then they do a deal. You got to make them do a deal because they're not going to do it willingly. And this is how you do it without resorting to violence. So in other words, this is how you do it and you keep the moral high ground. They're panicking because it's working.